It is the year 9 AD. In 3 days, the most powerful empire the world has ever seen will suffer a wound it never fully heals from. 20,000 soldiers, Rome's finest, are marching through a forest in what is now northern Germany. They are in enemy territory, but their commander isn't worried. He trusts his guide. He has known this man for years. He is practically family. His name is Arminius, and he is walking these men to their deaths. 3 Roman legions will enter the Teutoburg Forest over the next 72 hours. Not one of them will emerge. Their eagle standards, the most sacred objects in the Roman military, will be seized and paraded as trophies. Their commander will fall on his own sword rather than face capture. And when the news reaches Rome, the Emperor Augustus, the most powerful man alive, will bang his head against the walls of his palace and scream into the dark, "Varus, give me back my legions." This is the story of the Battle of Teutoburg Forest, the ambush that stopped the Roman Empire, and the man who made it happen, a warrior who Rome itself had trained to destroy them. To understand what happened in that forest, you first need to understand what Rome was in 9 AD. Augustus Caesar had spent 40 years transforming a blood-soaked republic into the most efficient empire the ancient world had ever produced. Its roads stretched from Scotland to Mesopotamia. Its legions had never lost a war they truly committed to. Its population numbered perhaps 70 million people, roughly a quarter of the entire world. And it was still growing. To the east, Rome had conquered. To the south, Rome had conquered. To the west, Gaul, Hispania, Britannia, Rome had conquered. The only direction left was north. Beyond the Rhine River lay Germania, wild, forested, unconquered. Augustus wanted it. Rome had been pushing into Germanic territory for almost 20 years. It wasn't going badly. They had built roads, established forts, begun extracting taxes. The Germanic tribes were fractured. Dozens of small clans that couldn't seem to agree on anything long enough to be a real threat. Rome had done this before. It knew how to absorb barbarian peoples. You station troops nearby, you integrate local elites into Roman society, you give their best young men a Roman education and a Roman rank. Then, slowly, they stop being Germanic and start being Roman. It was working, mostly. One of the men who went through this process was a young chieftain's son from the Cherusci tribe. He was taken to Rome, educated in Roman law and military tactics, given Roman citizenship, promoted to the rank of equestrian, the Roman knight class. He served in Roman armies. He proved himself in battle. His name, his Roman name, was Arminius. Rome looked at him and saw a success story. They were catastrophically wrong. We don't know exactly when Arminius decided to betray Rome. There's no diary, no confession. What we know is the result. At some point, probably around 7 or 8 AD, he began moving quietly between the Germanic tribes, not as a Roman officer, as a chieftain's son, as one of them. And he was asking one question: what would you sacrifice to be free? This wasn't easy. The tribes hated each other almost as much as they resented Rome. Getting them to cooperate was like herding wolves. But Arminius had something they didn't: a Roman military education. He knew exactly how legions operated, how they marched, how they set up camp, where they were vulnerable. He knew their formations, their signals, their blind spots. He had fought beside them. He had led them. He was not just a rebel. He was a weapon, forged by Rome, now aimed directly at Rome's throat. The Roman governor of Germania at the time was Publius Quinctilius Varus. He was not a military man by nature. He was an administrator, a politician. He had successfully governed Syria, and Augustus trusted him. But his understanding of the Germanic tribes was shallow. He saw what Rome wanted him to see: a people who were slowly, inevitably becoming Roman. He didn't see the resentment building underneath. He didn't see the secret meetings in the forest clearings. He didn't see Arminius for what he really was. Arminius sat at Varus's dinner table. He was a trusted advisor, a friend, and in the autumn of 9 AD, Arminius told Varus exactly what he needed to hear. There was a small uprising. Nothing serious, just some local tribes getting restless, far to the north. It would be nothing, a quick march, a show of Roman force, and they'd disperse. Arminius could guide them through the Teutoburg Forest. He knew the terrain. Varus believed him. He ordered 3 legions, the 17th, 18th, and 19th, to pack up and march. Into the trees. Imagine 15 miles of men. That's what a Roman marching column of 3 legions looked like. Soldiers, cavalry, supply wagons, camp followers, servants, wives, stretched out through winding forest tracks in a narrow, single-file formation that could barely turn around, let alone deploy into battle lines. It was September. The autumn rains had already begun. The paths were mud. The trees were so dense that the sky had almost disappeared. Arminius rode with Varus at the front. Then, at some point, the historians debate exactly where, he made his excuses and slipped away. He had to check on his men, he said. He'd be back. He was not coming back. The Germanic warriors had been waiting for days, hidden in the trees on both sides of the path, behind long earthen ramparts they had built specifically for this moment. Thousands of them, armed, silent, patient. When the attack came, it came from everywhere at once. Javelins rained from the tree line. Screaming warriors crashed out of the undergrowth. The Roman column, which needed open ground to form its famous battle formations, was trapped. Men at the front couldn't communicate with men at the rear. Officers couldn't see what was happening 50 yards away. Cavalry couldn't charge through the trees. Everything Rome was good at required open ground. They had none. The first day was chaos. Rome managed to push through and make camp, battered, bloodied, but still intact. Varus tried to reorganize, pushed forward again the next morning. The second day was worse. The Germanic warriors had simply moved ahead through the forest and set up again. The Romans walked into another ambush, and another, and another. For 3 days, every mile of forest was a trap. By the third day, the column had ceased to function as an army. Varus, realizing what had happened, and who had done it, fell on his own sword before he could be captured. His officers followed. The men who tried to surrender were sacrificed on Germanic altars. The officers who were taken alive were tortured. The Roman eagle standards, sacred symbols that legions would die rather than lose, were taken, displayed, mocked. Of the 20,000 men who had marched into the Teutoburg Forest, almost none came out. The news arrived in Rome and broke something in the emperor. Augustus had ruled for 40 years. He had survived civil wars, assassinations, betrayal. He was 71 years old and had seen almost everything. He had not seen this. Ancient sources tell us he tore his clothes and refused to cut his hair or shave for months, signs of the deepest mourning in Roman culture. He stopped eating properly. He paced his palace at night, and he would stop at walls and beat his head against them, crying out the same words again and again. Quintili vare, legiones rede. Varus, give me back my legions. He never got them back. What happened next was almost without precedent in Roman history. Rome immediately raised new legions to replace the ones lost. That was expected, but then something unexpected happened. They stopped. Rome pulled back to the Rhine, and they stayed there. There was no great revenge campaign. No Roman general crossed into the deep forest to reclaim the eagle standards or avenge the dead. Not yet, and never completely. A general named Germanicus would later lead punitive raids and recover 2 of the 3 eagles. But Rome never permanently occupied Germanic territory east of the Rhine again. That line, the Rhine, became the permanent border of the Roman Empire in the northwest, not by policy, not by choice, but because 3 legions walked into a forest and didn't come back. Think about what that means for a moment. Everything west of the Rhine became Roman, Gaul, Hispania, eventually Britannia. These places were Romanized. Latin became French, Spanish, Portuguese. Roman law became the foundation of Western legal systems. Christianity spread through Roman infrastructure. Everything east of the Rhine stayed Germanic. It didn't Romanize, it didn't Latinize. It kept its languages, its tribal structures, its own identity. The split between Romance language Europe and Germanic language Europe, France versus Germany, Italy versus Scandinavia, traces back, in a very real way, to 3 days in a forest in 9 AD. One ambush drew a line through Europe that is still visible today. So what happened to Arminius? His victory made him the most celebrated figure in Germanic legend. For centuries, the story of the warrior who defeated Rome was passed down around fires across northern Europe. When German nationalism began to rise in the 19th century, he became a symbol, given his Germanic name Hermann, celebrated as the father of German identity. A colossal statue of him still stands in a forest in northwest Germany, sword raised toward the sky. But the Romans remembered him too. The historian Tacitus, writing a century after the battle, called him, and this is remarkable, the liberator of Germania, the man who had not merely raided Rome, but had challenged it in open contest, and won. He didn't get to enjoy it long. After Teutoburg, Arminius tried to hold the Germanic coalition together, but the same fractious tribal politics that had almost stopped his plan before returned. The tribes went back to fighting each other. His own father-in-law, a pro-Roman chief named Segest, had warned Varus about the plot before the battle and spent years working against Arminius afterward. In 21 AD, 12 years after his greatest victory, Arminius was assassinated by members of his own tribe who feared his growing power. He was 37 years old. He never saw Rome fall. He never unified Germania. He won the greatest tactical victory of his era and died in a tribal feud. History doesn't always give its heroes a good ending. In 1987, a British army officer named Tony Clun, stationed in northwest Germany, got a metal detector and a hunch. He started walking the fields near a ridge called Calcreas. He found Roman coins, then more coins, then cavalry equipment, then weapons. Archaeologists have now excavated thousands of artifacts at the site. Roman sandal nails, sword blades, horse harnesses, a Roman officer's mask. The ground still holds what the forest swallowed. There's a museum there now, quiet, understated, in the middle of what looks like ordinary German countryside. 20,000 men died here, and the world they died in was never quite the same afterward. The Roman Empire would survive for another 4 centuries. It would conquer Britain, expand through the Middle East, reach the edges of Africa. But it never crossed back into that forest with real intention. The Rhine held, the line held, because of 3 days, because of one man who learned Rome's greatest secrets from the inside, and used them, because of Arminius. If this video made you think about how close history's turning points really are, how a single ambush, a single betrayal, a single decision to trust the wrong man can change the shape of civilizations, then subscribe and stay with us. On Era of Empires, this is what we do. We find the moments that history almost forgot, and we make sure you never do. I'll see you in the next one.